Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your kayak fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
I'm Mike Booth.
And I'm Adam Tiffin.
After the disappointment of a late defeat at Portsmouth, United get their first home win since early September as Burton Albion are beaten at Brunton Park. We look back on the loss at Pompey and win over the Brewers before previewing the weekend trip south to face Cambridge United.
There's a Neil with a pass so true to Balderstone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run, the old one too.
I think it's fair to say, last week, if someone had told you a narrow defeat at Portsmouth followed by a comfortable in the end, I think, win over Burton, you'd have been probably quite happy with it, wouldn't you guys? But
yeah,
that defeat at Portsmouth just feels a bit of a sucker punch, doesn't it, in terms of the late goal and having played so well in that second half?
Well, I feel like now it does and it doesn't, in that, yeah, we did lose, but we can hold our heads high that we took possibly the best team in this league all the way, and we matched them, and if anything, we're the better team for that second half. So I think, obviously, it's gut-wrenching to get the defeat, but having got the win on Tuesday, you know, and bounced back from that, I think it's all fun, really.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, would you look at it in the sense of the best thing about it is the fact that we didn't get too downhearted about that defeat and we followed it up with a good performance against Burton in midweek?
Yeah, I think that was the problem that some people had with the Leyton Orient performances. Is we come off the back of the Bolton game where, you know, we looked so good and everyone was really up for it, and then it was just a bit of a lull. So it was nice to actually see, you know, the performance levels go into that Portsmouth game, a big game, you know, an amazing ground, and then followed up obviously on Tuesday night. So that's probably the one thing I think that people wanted to see most, and that's what we got.
Absolutely. Right, before we get started with the news, I've got to tell you the sponsor news as usual. Once again this season we are being sponsored by the Carlisle United Sports Club London branch. You can join London branch wherever you live in the world. If you live in, as we always say, Jacksonville, Florida, if you live there you can join up. If you live in, tell me a random place, Mike, come on, you're usually good at this. Tahiti. Is that influenced by Red Dead Redemption 2 by any chance?
Maybe.
Yes, brilliant game. So yeah, if you live in Tahiti, you can join the Carlisle United Sports London branch. You can join it if you live in Carlisle, if you live in Stanix, you know, if you live in Upperby, you can join the Carlisle United Sports London branch. They did a lot of really good fundraising for the club, and also in terms of arranging tickets for away games for exiles and travel and things like that. And they recommend pubs to us as well. I'll actually have to get off at the start of the second half of the show and remind me. I need to tell you what the recommended pub is for Cambridge. But yeah, if you want to find out more about them, go to their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org, or just grab one of the guys at one of the away games who's selling at the bar, and I'm sure they'll be able to tell you a bit more information. So there you go. Mike, have you got a question for us? Because I put you on the spot here, didn't I, before the start of the show?
I haven't. Cambridge are one of them teams that we've played too many times in recent years for me to get something, really. Okay, well, we'll leave it. Unfortunately, no question this week then, so we'll get straight into the news section. And only a few little bits in here this week. First up, both youth team related, actually, these two first bits. And what we've got is United's under-18s have been drawn at home to Barnsley in the first round of the FA Youth Cup. That'll take place at Brunton Park next Tuesday, the 31st of October. Kick off at 6 p.m. Always good, these games, though, aren't they, Adam? The youth team games of the FA Youth Cup. I think they've broadcast a few of them on YouTube in recent years as well, and it's just nice to see them in action because a lot of fans don't get to see these under-18s play, do they?
Yeah, they're often not played sort of in and around Brunton Park as well. They're often played, you know, on the training pitches as well. So it's nice to see them for themselves to get on Brunton Park and get used to playing on those big pitches, but also to be playing against a team like Barnsley, even if it is just, you know, the youth teams. It's still a decent club to be playing against for them personally. Yeah,
it's one of those ones that when you get in the FA Youth Cup first round, it's similar to the actual FA Cup in that Barnsley's probably one of the better teams we could have faced in the first round,
exactly.
Which is sod's law, but just the way it works, isn't it? The other bit of news, it relates to the youth team. Josh O'Brien, he's joined Workington Reds on a work experience youth deal. It's basically a youth loan, essentially, isn't it? But it's one of these ones that doesn't really have a time limit on it, does it, Mike? But I don't know too much about Josh, you know, because it's one of these things we don't get a lot of information on some of the youth team players. But from looking at the photos of him, he looks a big lad, doesn't he? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think Danny Granger's helped around our youth team a little bit, hasn't he? So he'll sort of have seen something about him. So yeah, hopefully it'll beef him up a bit, playing against plasterers and landscape gardeners.
Yeah,
kind of
well,
thing,
I know from that league, from working at Marine last year, it's a very physical standard, and you get a lot of players coming in from teams like Carlisle on these loans, and it does sort them out quite quickly in terms of who you think is going to be able to caper that physical level, as you said, Mike. So I think it'll be a good loan for him. And I think he actually came off the bench on Tuesday night against Marsk, which is good for him to get his first debut so quickly.
Yeah, and
debut.
Well, yeah, his first appearance. Yeah, it's. I think he's a second year YTS, isn't he? So the fact that we're setting him out on a youth loan this early to a decent standard at Workington. I mean, you look last season, with the greatest respect to Dan Hill, he went to Clayton Moore Celtic, and at that point you kind of think, okay, is he likely to get a deal? Probably not. Whereas sending O'Brien to Workington, like you said, Nugent to Workington last season, it shows that maybe he's one they're looking at already and thinking, okay, let's see if this lad's capable of getting a pro deal come the end of the season. I think that's
obviously Workington were in the league below last year as well, so that speaks even more highly to how highly they think of O'Brien, sending him to that level when Kai, obviously, geographically it makes sense to send youth team players to Workington, but I hope he does well.
Yeah, definitely. One other little bit, you spotted this one, Adam, didn't you, in terms of the game at Tuesday night? In fact, we did spot this actually, didn't we? They were on Tuesday night as well, Mike. It was a large group related to the EDI work that the club are doing that attended the game, and they seemed to really enjoy it, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I think there was over 100 of them in at least where I was in the Andrew Jenkins stand. There was a lot in and around me, and they're all in the. I saw a lot of them in old, sort of not quite retro, but sort of early 2000s Carlisle United kits, and I think some of them were at the hilltop of. They've got their own football team now, which is great for them. And it's good for them, one, to be at a game where we actually did well, but just to get them in and involved in the club, and hopefully, they'll be coming back on their own accord.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing that you want from these things. You want to make them welcoming as part of the community, but also you want to get them sort of hooked onto the club, like anyone really. It's the same with the club. Do a lot of really good work, I have to say, in terms of getting schools down for games as well. And Tuesday night games are a bit more difficult because obviously the kids need to be chaperones the wrong way. They need people, like a certain number of adults there with them when they're attending the game. So you can't really do a Tuesday night game because it's a bit late for them. So it makes more sense to do stuff like this, for those games as well. So, yeah, I think the club do a lot of good community work, and I think in terms of what's going to happen going forward, the Piatics as well, hopefully that'll go even further. So, yeah, really, really good to see. Right, let's look back on the last two fixtures then. We'll start off with Portsmouth away. So Portsmouth 1, Carlisle United 0. We sort of briefly touched on it there in the introductions. A game of two halves, from what I can gather from people who were there. We'll hear from Johnny Atwood, one of our friends of the pod, with his 6-second review in a little bit. I think he says something along those lines. But a lot of real positives to take from this one, Mike, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I think realistically, I know my prediction was a win because that would have just been peak Carlisle United, but I think people would have taken a draw at the very, very, would have been absolutely chuffed to bits with a draw. And we nearly got one, and it's just a bit of a sucker punch. But like I said before, knowing that we've taken one of the best teams in the league all the way, and that knowing that we've bounced back from that, and it didn't knock our spirits too much, I think all in all, it's relatively positive as far as defeats go.
Yeah, I think it's one, Adam, is it, where you look back and you just got to take the positives from it. You can't get too downhearted by the fact that you did concede that late goal.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, if you remove context and just say we lost to Portsmouth, I'm sure most fans will go, well, that's probably expected. But actually, when you add the context, it gets better because we were, competitive for, a decent amount of the game and had opportunities to score. And obviously, we were a little bit fortunate that Colby Bishop wasn't quite on form that day, so things could have been not so close. But yeah, you've got those types of games where you're not expected to win, and you come so close to getting something, and you don't. You can't beat yourself up over it. You've got to take the positives because you weren't expected to get anything, and you almost did.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to focus on the positive, definitely, after the game. And I think Simmo pretty much did in his post-match interview, wasn't he? He wasn't too downhearted. Sometimes some recent games where he sort of, James Phillips or someone in the post-match interview said, I think we've played quite well in that one. He's like, well, have we really? We haven't got the result, like stuff like the table he doesn't like that phrase, does he, Simmo? I don't think, but he was generally positive after this one. Team lineup's not really massive surprise. The fact that there was no change to the starting 11. Butterworth coming onto bench. I made that mistake you made, Mike, the other week.
Yeah.
Butterworth came onto the bench in place of Whelan for this one. In terms of the chances, as you mentioned there, first half it was mostly Portsmouth. And as you said there, Adam, Colby Bishop probably could have had a hat-trick actually first half of some of probably the best chances that they had, didn't he? I think there's one chance for Robertson from range that Holy sort of stung his palms and he saved it second time, but there was 2 or 3 really good close range chances, particularly that one that went across the 6-yard box, wasn't there, Adam, that he really should be burying.
Yeah, watching back the highlights, he had his head buried underneath his shirt after that one because he just could not believe. And, I was listening to it on the radio, and the reaction of Jabbo and James Phillips just seemed like the roar of Brunton Park was going to be coming any second. But yeah, looking back on the highlights, I'm not sure how it looks like he's barely even made contact with it, which for someone in so much space in his form was just amazing. Obviously brilliant for Carlisle, but yeah, a real scare.
I do wonder if it was Holy's presence maybe that put him off a little bit there, because he sort of made himself big, didn't he, Holy? And I know it wasn't right up against.
It's hard not to with someone his size.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? Yeah. I should say, you mentioned Jabbo there. The curse of Jabbo continues, doesn't it? I still don't think he's actually commentated on a Carlisle win.
No, well, that's what I think James Phillips said that after the final whistle, or just after the goal's gone in. Yeah. Mentioned Jabbo, bless him.
Yeah. Yeah, poor bugger. We love Jabba on this show anyway, but there you go. United did have a good chance first half, though, with Alfie McCallum, didn't they, Mike? There was a ball played across the box by Armour, found McCallum at the far post, and he sort of hit the shot into the ground, didn't he? Bounced up, and the defender just got into a really good place on the line to block it.
Yeah, and obviously McCallum had another very good chance late on. And like you sort of said before, it's good to look back knowing, well, do you know what? We created good chances. If we'd have put this away, if this had gone that side of the post or whatever, it's good to be thinking that, whereas we had other games maybe earlier in the season where we weren't creating good chances and we're losing games and it was a little bit bleaker. But now, if you're losing games and you're creating some chances, it's a little bit more positive. Yeah,
you mentioned that Alfie McCallum chance. It actually came just at the start of the second half. It was literally from the kickoff almost. And
I'm thinking of the other one.
You're thinking of Butterworth.
Yeah,
Butterworth. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Adam, that chance from McCallum, should he be burying that? I think he's done as well as he can there to dig the shot out, really. And he sort of trickled onto the post, didn't it?
Well, it's his touch that doesn't help him because he can't get into the position to actually be able to hit the ball properly. That's why he's sort of trickled it to that far post. But yeah, I think his first touch wasn't brilliant for that, and I think, I suppose we'll come on to the Burton game later, but you see the difference in having someone like Butterworth who's a bit more sort of technical going forward, because I think if he was in that situation, he probably would have done a lot better with it. But yeah, that's a chance you've got to at least be putting on target. I know it was close, just past the post, but you'd expect someone to hit the target from that angle and that space.
Yeah. As you mentioned there, Mike, Butterworth, he had that chance late on, didn't he? It's a you know what? Part of me was originally when I saw it, I was like, is that as good a save as James made out to be on the radio? But actually, I do think it is, because he does not have much time to react, does he, Norris, to get down and make the save? And it's really well struck by Butterworth too.
Yeah, exactly. And Simmo said, well, actually on Tuesday night, that Butterworth in training, he's like a very, very good finisher. And that's like one of his main strengths. So I think he did all he could with the effort. I don't think there's a lot more he could do. I think it was just a brilliant save.
Yeah, it's just really, really good goalkeeping. And then the sucker punch came, didn't it, Adam, right at the end? Shocknessy, I should say. I thought it was Shaughnessy. I was convinced it was, but James Phillips did say in the commentary that apparently his family had contacted Radio Derby years ago and he was a Burton saying, no, it's Shocknessy, apparently. So Shocknessy, a real shocker for Carlisle, really, wasn't it, right at the end there? Sparks' corner from the right, and it's the one time one of their players really got away in a set piece, wasn't it? And he just gets above Armour and not much we could have done really, and then was there?
Yeah, is it the name of the new? Is it the Carlisle Social that's out on BBC Side? They were talking about. James Phillips was talking about the sort of brilliance of the awareness of the Portsmouth players to run sort of a schemed set piece at that time of the game, considering the sort of lack of chances or being able to put away the chances they'd created and that frustration that came from it. Being able to have that clear head and run something like that was impressive, because I think Simmo talked about Armour getting a bit of a block, and then that's what allowed Shocknessy to get the header off. But yeah, it's just one of those ones. You see the reactions of the players, they all just can't believe it. You put in all that effort to get something that late on, seemingly just a free header. It's just deflating.
It's a fair point, that, isn't it, Mike, in terms of the being able to be so focused on a set piece that late on and actually do a proper routine, because you sometimes find those late set pieces, they're just chaos, aren't they? It's just, I'll just bundle the ball in and see what can happen. But that's the difference of a top of the table team, isn't it? And they haven't played that well, but they've been switched on enough in that one situation to get the winner. Yeah,
and to be honest, that was us last season. We were doing that. Remember Ryan Edmondson at Swindon?
Yes.
And this season we just seem to be weaker at defending set pieces and weaker at attacking set pieces, which is a little bit of a concern for me.
Obviously, we lost Paul Gerrard, who was responsible for a lot in terms of planning the set pieces, so maybe something for Dave Timmins to work on in training, possibly. I'm sure they are working on it, to be fair, and we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, so that's where it was with that. So we'll get to some of the talking points in a sec, but what I'll do, I'll play the 6-second review from Johnny, because Johnny went down for the weekend, he's a good friend of ours, and here's what his thoughts were on Portsmouth away.
So Portsmouth on Saturday, I think it was a game of two halves again, to be honest. We've seen it a couple of times this season. Wigan, Peterborough stand out. First half, Portsmouth were the better team, weren't they? I think they'll have been disappointed to go in at 0-0. We had that one McCallum chance, but overall, yeah, we did well to go in at 0-0. Second half, I don't know what Simmo said at half time, but we looked fantastic. Obviously, we had the early McCallum chance that came off the post. Bit of a poor touch, wasn't it? Never got it out his feet. But yeah, the Butterworth shot late on, great save from the goalkeeper. We were right behind the goal and that looked in all the way. But yeah, for them to go up and score in injury time there for the 3 points, it was harsh. I thought we deserved at least a point, if not 3, out of the game. But we just need to take that performance into Burton now, don't we, and hopefully get 3 points, and then Cambridge on Saturday as well. Both winnable games that we should be aiming for. Portsmouth, decent away. We spoke to a few of the Portsmouth fans after, they're all sound, said that we deserved way more out of the game. And yeah, nice place, Portsmouth. I've seen mention about the sausage rolls. The sausage rolls were phenomenal. I did have a chicken balti pie in the first half though, and that was awful, so stick to the sausage rolls. Yeah, on to Burton, and then looking forward to Cambridge on Saturday.
I'm not going to let it slip next time I see him about taking the mickey out of the fact that he had both a pie and a sausage roll. Okay, what a pig. Fair assessment there, I think. It's a good point about all the Portsmouth fans being full of praise for us after the game, and another fantastic away following, wasn't it, Adam? Into nearly 700 going all the way down to Portsmouth for a game like that, when we've got a real run of away games coming up as well. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, this run of fixtures, especially with the cup draw against Leyton Orient, in terms of distance travelled, is absolutely horrendous. And I know Simmo always says, we're never going to be able to change where Carlisle is, in terms of these long journeys. But it's just incredible that we have the fans that we have who are willing to make those journeys, and obviously the massive Portsmouth supporters club that we have as well that make up a lot of the make up a lot of the fans. But no, on a serious note, absolutely brilliant support. And we're getting those consistent numbers every week. I think there's 500 odds going to Cambridge as well. So, yeah, you can't say any more than that, really.
But it's not just the numbers as well. The fans have been loud and have been really getting behind the team every game, which I think is massive as well.
Yeah, you could definitely hear that in the commentary for this one. You could, from start to finish, constant noise. Second half especially was really, really impressive. Mike, do you feel like a performance like this shows that the players are starting to sort of get to grips with the division? I mean, when you look at the last, if you go back to this month, basically the games we played, take out the Leyton Orient game, which was just a bit of a damp squib really in the end. All the games we've looked quite competitive, haven't we? We look like we really have got a grip of this is how you have to play in this division, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, when we maybe weren't doing that well and we had Gibson basically getting goals that were just a testament to, well, if you don't have a go, you won't score. And I think other players have kind of taken note of that and gone, all right, well, I'm going to have a go and I'm going to try and do this. And if it doesn't come off, it doesn't come off. But I've been noticing a bit more of that from a few players. And considering that, we are 20th in the table, the players are relatively confident and they're playing with a little bit of freedom as well now, more so than they were a few weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely see that. And Adam, it was quite encouraging to see a good performance from Butterworth coming off the bench in this game, obviously, which led into the Burton game, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he's a testament of, Simmo's been quite critical of the reserves and all the fringe players in recent weeks, and Butterworth took his chance in that reserve game. And it's a prime example for the rest of them, isn't it? Take your chance in these games, you'll get an opportunity.
Yeah, there's only really been him and Robinson who have sort of received quite public praise from Simmo, from that sort of group of players. But it was a good one to see him because we need options in that midfield because it is very thin, especially with the bookings and things like that. There's likely to be someone missing at some point. So just to have that option is good, and to know he can play in that sort of more central midfield role rather than having to play him maybe on the wings or something like that. But it was definitely good to get him some decent minutes, and he's shown that he's got something about him, and that's what he needs to do in those situations.
Absolutely. And just before I do a little roundup of the League One results from the weekend, it was nice to get a bit of praise from an opposition manager as well, wasn't it, really, Mike, in terms of John Mousinho after the game basically said that they'd got lucky and we probably deserved something out of the game, and he particularly praised his former Preston teammate, Joe Garner, didn't he, for his performance and how he did up front.
Yeah, I think that's refreshing from opposition managers, but not just the managers. I mean, the Portsmouth fans as well. They all sort of seem to say, well, not only were our fans excellent, but that the team was excellent. And I go out looking for people rubbing our noses in certain results on Twitter, and I couldn't find any of it. All our fans were very complimentary, and yeah, it was very good to see.
You had to put your John Mellish gif away for 1 week, unfortunately, that you'd like to get out for these games. Right, a quick rundown of the League One results from the weekend. Bolton won 2-1 at home against Northampton, who are finding things a little bit tough at the moment, I think it's fair to say. Burton Albion beat Bristol Rovers 4-1, which looks an astonishing result based on the performance they put up against us in midweek. I can't imagine how bad Bristol Rovers were, which has seemingly led to the sacking of Joey Barton earlier today, hasn't it? That's news that's just emerged. Charlton got a 4-0 win over Reading, and Reading's form's ridiculous, isn't it? They're in the league, I think they've barely scored and lost the last 6 or something. But then in the trophy, the last 2 games, they've got an aggregate score of 14-0. Which is just stupid, really, isn't it? Cheltenham got their first win, a 1-0 win over our opponents this weekend, Cambridge United. Not a great result for Cambridge, that. Exeter 0, Wigan 2. Have you seen the stats for this game, Mike?
No.
I think I showed them. It's outrageous. I think Wigan had something like 3 shots and 2 of them were on target, and Exeter had something like 25 shots or something, and like 75% possession or something. It was ridiculous. They totally dominated, and all the Wigan fans I saw online said, like, yeah, proper smash and grab, did not deserve a thing from that game.
But I've said all along, I'm into all of these stats and expected goals and all that, but the only stat that matters is goals at the end of the day.
Exactly. Final score's the only one that really matters. Fleetwood 0, Lincoln 1. Good result for their caretaker boss there. Leyton Orient 1-1 against Barnsley. Oxford got a 1-1 draw with Blackpool. Peterborough 2-2 against Wickham. Shrewsbury got a 1-0 win over Derby. Did you see the penalty decision in this game, Adam? It was
Yes, I did.
Absolutely incredible. They missed the penalty, I should say, but still outrageous, wasn't it?
I think he must have took a good 2-3 steps before, at least from the camera angle, before actually going down. So he got past the Derby defender, I don't know which one it was, into the box, and there's absolutely no one around him. I don't know, I don't think you can see where the referee was from the video that was going around. One other thing from that game was Conor Hourihane was went over to the fans at the end to basically say, look, we're trying our best here, we're not putting in dud performances just because we want to. But the fans are having a right good go at him and saying that the football they're playing is awful. I mean, they weren't particularly good against us, even though they won. But things are a bit turbulent at Derby.
Yeah, it's not the easiest place there really at the moment. So there you go. Right, let's move on then to a happier game to talk about. Carlisle United 2, Burton Albion 1. Mike, we drove up to this one, didn't we? We came up for the midweek game, which we don't often get a chance to do because you don't really get the opportunity to come to midweek games, and very enjoyable, wasn't it? I think it was your first midweek since the Barrow game, wasn't it? The 5-1.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, well, on the way up, we made the mutual decision of going to the Chippy van for dinner, and you said, yeah, that's a really good idea, because it won't be that busy. It was busy. It was very busy. And then you were like, oh, well, they should have had 2 Chippy vans on. They should have seen this coming. Well, you didn't see this coming, so...
No, I didn't. I'll admit that, yeah.
But no, going to the ground early, there's a bit of a low-key kind of Christmas market type buzz around pre-match. Everyone's sort of drinking the beers out of these plastic cups before the game, and and the atmosphere building up. It's the place to be, and it's good that the atmosphere sort of builds up a couple of hours before kick-off, and then when it gets going, the atmosphere's in full flow.
It hasn't really been like that for Tuesday night games, Adam, has it? For a number of years, and to get a crowd of over 6,000, with over 6,000 home fans, I should say, as well, on a Tuesday night with Champions League football on, it shows that the people are really backing the club right now, aren't they?
Yeah, and especially after obviously I know we had the Bolton results somewhat recently, but 2 disappointing for very different reasons. 2 disappointing results in back-to-back weeks. So after that, to get the support that we're getting on a Tuesday night, as you said, and schools are back in, so people may be less inclined to come because of the times that the games are at, but it's a testament to this fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was 2 additional fans there in the fan zone, wasn't there, Mike, that we saw, the Piatics?
Yeah.
Next to the Chippy van, having a good chat with a lot of the fans around there, weren't they? It was really nice to see.
Yeah.
And wearing one of Rob Morley's Simmo pin badges. If anyone hasn't got one of them, do get one. They're really fantastic. I don't know if they're still on sale. Actually, might have sold out of them. I'm not sure, but well worth checking out his website anyway. I'd 100% recommend that. Well, let's talk about the game then. Lineup wise, there was kind of a feeling that Alfie might miss out because he'd gone off injured, hadn't he, in the game against Portsmouth, and the decision taken was to bring in Dan Butterworth. He could have brought another striker in and gone 4-4-2 potentially, but Simmo decided to go with that 4-2-3-1. Is that what you expected, Adam?
Yeah, I don't, especially after the Portsmouth game, I thought he's sort of settled a little bit on this 4-back now. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I thought they might go to a 5-back against Portsmouth, with Ben Barkley being back involved in the squad. Obviously, he did get run out eventually against Burton, but I thought he would continue with that after doing the same against Portsmouth. And to be honest, I was quite happy to see Butterworth because of the performances he'd had of late, even though obviously Portsmouth was a bit more of a cameo and the game before that was just a reserve game. But it's another opportunity, and he's took it well, as we'll get on to.
Yeah, absolutely. First half, Mike, we were the better side, but probably Burton had their better chances the second half. I think it's fair to say. First half, sorry, I should say. And early on, there was a chance to carry all that was fairly comfortably saved by Holy. And then Maguire had a really good chance, didn't he, with a cross to the far post. And it's one of those ones, I think he's got to do a bit better with it, but at the same time, it's not the easiest chance in the world, is it?
Yeah, I mean, watching back, it was a fantastic ball in from Finn back on that right-hand side, and he almost kind of didn't anticipate it, and then he realised where the ball was going and then anticipated. But I think these attacking players, they're only going to get more used to playing with each other and better at anticipating these sorts of things. But yeah, first half, we just made one little mistake in midfield, didn't we? And were punished for it. I did half think at half time that was this going to be another of those games, because we've had a few of them this season.
Yeah, we have. I mean, Adam Yusuf had a great view of that Finn back cross from the east stand side as well. He just looked like he clipped into that perfect area, didn't he, beyond the fence?
Well, I thought what had happened was actually what ended up happening with the Gibson goal, where he'd headed it and then the keeper had pushed it into the net instead of making the save, obviously from the angle. Whilst we're on Finn back, I don't know if I hope both of you are aware of the player ratings that I put out sort of after every game. If anyone's listening, check out my Twitter. You can give your player ratings on each player after every game. And I gave Finback a 6.5 out of 10, which seems to be getting a bit of backlash for being a bit harsh. I thought he was good, but I just didn't think he was really influential. But I just wanted to get your two opinions on it, because some people seem to think he was one of the best players on the pitch.
I think I'd probably agree with other people. I maybe not one of the best on the pitch. I thought he had probably one of his better games since he's come back. Interestingly, on the Carlisle Social, that was what the joint agreement for man of the match for that game was. I didn't give it to him. I actually gave it to John Mellish, who we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I thought what he did really well was set the tone with a few of his tackles, especially in the in the second half as well. Actually, the way he sort of lifted us and the way he sort of charged into a few of them. But yeah, I can sort of see what you mean. I think he's starting to get there a bit more in terms of putting the ball in the box, because that's been the thing that's frustrated me about him this season, is that far too often he gets into good positions to put a ball in and he's like, no, I'm going to pass it back to Gibson or to Maguire or someone, and he's kind of like, just have a go yourself. You did it last season. You start to see that a little bit more now, and I think his confidence building up. I don't know what you think on it, Mike.
Yeah, I think on Tuesday night we saw him get forward more than we've seen him get forward when he's been playing at wing back in some other games, which was really good to see. And yeah, I think you touched on his tackling. There was one in the first half that was brilliant, where he almost sort of tackled and passed it at the same time, where he sort of knew, I think, that if he positioned his body in such a way with a slide tackle, that it would ricochet off him, and I think it was Maguire was away down the right, which was that was really good. But I think he had a good game, and with player ratings, I'm a little bit bitter personally, because in high school I was a goalkeeper, and in GCSE PE you get like rated and assessed on a game. I kept a clean sheet. I didn't really get tested much, but I kept a clean sheet, and I got 7 out of 10. And I was like, what more could I have done to get 10 out of 10? You know, but yeah. So I'm personally a bit bitter about some player ratings like that.
How long ago was that, Mike?
Oh, it's about 15 years ago now, and I'm still not over it.
Still bitter about it. There you go.
The teacher.
Yep. Can you remember the teacher, Mike?
Do you know what? I can't. No. But there you go.
Can't call him out. Helm got the goal for Burton. I don't know. I've seen a few people criticise Holy for this one, and at first I was kind of like, at the time I was a bit, maybe it wasn't that far in the corner, but actually when you look it back on the highlights, it's a really well struck shot, isn't it? And that's the difference in League One. You've got players who probably don't even score that many goals, but can get a shot away that quickly and that powerfully past your keeper before he's really got a chance to dive for it.
Yeah, the one thing that I was really annoyed about with that goal wasn't Holy. I don't think he really could have done much more about it. I think it was the fact that we'd had, so much possession, so much dominance, and then, ended up behind so easily. But also, I think the defence, just because they'd had so much of the ball, weren't quite switched on, where they gave them a bit too much space to get a shot off. Because like you say, in this league, you can't allow much space at all. And they gave him probably a yard or two to get a shot away, which allowed him to pick his spot, and he picked it well.
I want to ask you about the there was a penalty shot in the first half, Adam, and you'll have had a better view of this than me and Mike, because we're on the paddock side. Because I think we completely missed it until we saw the highlights back later. It was the chance Joe Garner had where Butterworth gets into the box on the right-hand side and plays the ball across. Garner controls it and hits a shot that hits the defender on the line and is cleared. Butterworth gets crunched after the ball's gone.
Yeah.
That's a penalty, isn't it, surely?
Yeah, I think with football, I saw it at first and I saw him get challenged after he played the ball. I think it's one of those ones where it's just going to come down to the referee, because it was quite late. It's not like as if he's played the ball and then immediately afterwards he's been hit. He's played the ball, there's a little bit of a gap, and then the guy's gone into him. So I can understand why a lot of people probably would think it's a penalty. I don't, just because I think he's got the ball off, and it's just not going to get given. But I can certainly understand where you're coming from.
I feel like VAR, Mike, would have looked back at that and probably had a decent shout for giving it.
Keep it away from Carlisle.
It would.
But I think the officials were watching Garner and watching that shot. At the time, I thought it maybe struck the Burton defender's arm on the line. Looking back now, I don't think it did. But on the whole, while we're on about sort of officials, I think they were brilliant. I think Burton came with a clear plan of disrupting the game and not letting it flow, and the officials let it flow very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, he pinned down the defender, didn't he, early on, the right-back Hamer, with a booking, didn't he, for a time wasting. I don't think he was actually wasting that much time, but I think he'd done it a few times, and he was kind of like, I'm sick of this, just get on with it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was... I do think they were very good officials, but I think also Burton fans would probably have a right to be, like, some of them were a little bit harsh. Like, especially that one, I thought... He's just because the centre backs were just meandering into the box for the long throw in, so it wasn't really him that was causing the weight; it was the centre backs. So I thought that was a little bit harsh, but we'll take it.
I think the reason he did it is because it took so long that Garner had a chance to change his mind and come back to come and defend it, and he thought, "This like, if it's taken this long, just get on with it." You know what I mean? I think it's going to be. I think he played the advantage very well. Actually, I was quite impressed with how often he pulled back for free kicks on a few occasions, and he's quite an impressive referee. I thought in terms of. His decision making, and there was one decision by one of the officials second half that we'll get onto in a minute that looks a bit dodgy from looking back at the footage now. But there was that chance for Gary mentioned there, and into the second half, the Jordan Gibson goal. Mike, you are the official gatekeeper of assists on Twitter for Carl United.
Yeah.
Can you genuinely say that's a Danny Butterworth assist?
No. Well, I've credited it with him, but because I've got two sort of piles this season, and that's, strictly speaking, that is an assist. But I think what Danny Butterworth was trying to do was what Paul Gascoigne did against Scotland in Euro 96. And then he realised that he got too much on the ball and kind of stopped and realised, I'm not getting that. But Gibson, fair play, just kept running in at the far post. And I think Crocombe could have done a bit better. But, again, Gibson, if you don't have a go, you're not going to score.
Well, Crocombe had Poppard on wrist, didn't he, Adam? I think it went right through them. It was not a great attempt to save it, but as Mike says there, you just got to hit the target, and then the technique is the most important thing. Yeah,
and he's hit it with some power as well. Coming onto it first time, those ones are so easy to miss hits, just to slice into the Warwick. But he made a very clean contact with it. I thought at first the keeper had pushed it behind for a corner. When I saw the net ripple, it was only when I sort of looked behind and saw the reaction of the fans behind the goal that I realised it was hit the back of the net. But yeah, Gibson again just getting into good positions. It's good awareness as well, good being proactive rather than being reactive, because he's a mile away from when the ball's first played. He's right over on the touchline, but he sees the run of Butterworth, and I think he sort of anticipates that he might end up getting the ball, and it worked out for him.
Yeah, I think what you say there, Mike, about what he's trying to do, I think what's happened is, I think he's got caught between wanting to do that, but then also thinking, there might be an opportunity to actually put this first time over the keeper.
Yeah.
Doesn't do either of those things, but actually puts it on a play for Jordan Gibson to get the equaliser. From there, it was pretty much all United. I think they had one chance going forward that Walker put into the side netting. Jordan Gibson had a decent chance from range on his left foot that was well held by Crocombe. And then before the winning goal, the two other major incidents were Moxon's block that almost flew into the top corner. He looked much closer to the top corner from where we were in the paddock, didn't he, Mike? But actually, when you look back, it was straight at Crocombe, wasn't it? And he got a bit lucky there, I think it's fair to say, the defender.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the way our luck has been this season, if we were the defending team in that situation, the ball would have hit the back of the net. It was just unfortunate. But yeah, we kept the pressure on and we kept going.
All right, Adam, you'll have had a good view of this one from the East Stand as well. Finn Back's disallowed goal. Did that ball go out or not? Because looking back, when it happened at the time, I saw the flag go quite early once he put it in the net. And I thought, it's gone out of play. But looking back on the pitch side blues, it doesn't look to me like it's gone out. Because of the curve on it and the way it comes to back about 3 or 4 yards out, I think it was in.
Well, my initial sort of thoughts as it was happening was the cross got deflected over the keeper. And for a split second, I was like, why is the keeper being so casual about this? Like, he was just sort of hands down watching it go over his head. And then it got to back at I thought it was Butterworth at first. Butterworth might not have even been on the pitch at that point, but I thought it was Butterworth. Back got on the end of it, obviously nodded it in, saw the assistant's flag up on the far side. I had no clue what for. I thought he'd given it as offside. I was like, well, that's impossible. There's no way he was offside in that scenario. Then it turns out to be a corner. And then, like as you said, the pitch side blues footage. I don't see how from the angle that Armour crossed at, because if he was at the byline, I was like, okay, fair enough. But it's a good 5 yards away from the byline. I don't think it's looped that much and curled enough to go out and come back in. So I think Burton might have gotten away with it, but it's so contentious, and ultimately it doesn't matter in the end. But I feel bad for Finn back because it could have been his first Carlisle goal. Yeah,
that's the frustrating thing about it. And like you said, I think the only way you're ever going to tell is if you've had a camera up in the A stand, but basically right along that line to show you. I don't think that's the only way you would have found out. And then came the winning goal, Mike, late on, and again, lovely play by Gibson. Actually, good play by Maguire to play Gibson in down the left and cuts back onto his right. And he's so good at those little sort of dinked, chipped crosses to the far post, isn't he, Gibson? And finds Terry there, who I have to say does really well to hit it back across goal. I don't think it's going in. I
thought it was at the time, but yeah.
I don't think it's going in. And Joe Garner, Johnny on the spot, bundles the ball and himself into the back of the net, which I think fans of a certain vintage will remember. I think it was Keith Welwyn back in the day used to do that quite often, end up in the back of the net with the ball, and it's the winning goal. No less than we deserve, really, was it?
No, not at all. It was fantastic, and Ablade is now our second highest assister in the squad. Yeah, again, did he mean the assist? I don't know, but he certainly caused a lot of chaos when he came on, and I think Simmo said that he was contemplating taking Garner off, but you know, the only person who's going to sort of have the nous to head that in the 88th minute is Joe Garner. But I saw something before. The 3 goals he scored this season have been in the 88th minute and then 2 in the 90th. So
that sums it up, doesn't it? Really, he's been late on. I mean, we talked about the fact that maybe he needs to be, rested a little bit. But if he's still playing that well towards the end of games, it just shows, doesn't it? And yeah, you mentioned Terry there, Mike. Adam, about him. He's a scrappy sort of player, isn't he? I think we sort of said this last week. He's not the finished article by any means, but he does have something about him, doesn't he? In terms of the way that he comes on, and very much in that Johan Smith style. You're not really quite sure what he's going to do next, and he causes a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, I use the analogy of him just not being 100% all the time. It's like if you play FIFA and you just have R2 or the right trigger, whatever console you play on, and just tape it down and just leave it there for the whole time that he's on. He's just full force all the time, and it's brilliant in certain scenarios. I thought it was maybe a little bit early to bring him on initially, but obviously worked out in the end. But there was another chance, I can't remember exactly when it was, that it come over to him on the far side, and his touch was really scrappy, and then he slipped on the ball, and it's just like, just breathe, Terry. Just take a second, assess things, and then you can go if you want to. But he's a chaos player. That's what he's been brought in to do, and it works.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right about that other one. It was a lovely ball over to him, and you could tell he was just desperate to take, because I think he knew, if I get this bang on right, I get this control right, I'm in on goal. And instead of thinking, let's just get the control right first and then see where I am, you're right. He's trying to think ahead a little bit too much at times. But hey, he had the awareness to head it back across goal into an area. You might say it wasn't intentional, Mike, but the whole point of it is you put it into a good area and said to someone, right, you get on the end of that. And Joe Garner's done that, hasn't he? So
yeah, really exactly. And as well, because of his pace, Burton couldn't push high as they were chasing that goal for injury time. If they pushed high, Ablade's got them all for speed. So, it just gives us that little thing that we had with Patrick last season that some people didn't always notice.
Yeah, and late on, to be fair to him, he took the ball into the corner really well and just held it there, didn't he? And just said, right, I'm just going to keep it here, and Garner did similar. So, really, really good to see that. Well, let's talk about some of the talking points before we do the 6-second reviews. I put one down in. I don't know what you guys think of this. Adam, you might want to say first, but best footballing performance of the season? Possibly the best one since Simmo's come back? I know we were helped a bit by Burton in that sense, but in terms of just pure football, in terms of passing, playing, that kind of thing, I thought it was one of the better ones we've had.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it was helped by Burton. I saw Mike, you commented under one of the, I think it was the Man of the Match post I put out about how good Lavelle and Mellish were. And the fact that they were sort of helped by the fact that Burton were so negative in their approach. I mean, you can't believe they scored 4 at the weekend playing like that.
6-3-1 they were playing. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I know, it was unbelievable. But I think it was good just to see that other side of the team. The fact that they can play that sort of possession-heavy style, 65% possession. I think they had nearly 500 passes to Burton's 260. So it's good to see that there is that capability there if needed. But yeah, I think, like I said, it was massively helped by Burton.
Yeah, were you a little bit surprised, Mike, by how negative they were? I mean, that 6-3-1, and it was good to see the patience that we showed there, wasn't it? Because there was one bloke stood behind me. He was doing my head in front of the game. He was doing a running commentary, and everything was terrible. And like he was constantly wanting to just lump the ball forward, and we were around him like, no, it's fine. You can keep the ball sometimes, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. And Adam touched on it then, them sort of playing a 6-3-1. The amount of times that they tried to get the ball forward, and we had the numbers in sort of our third. So we'd rather than just sort of head it and it's straight back at them and then straight back at us, we just sort of. Mellish had the composure of a 35-year-old Italian centre-half who was just so composed on the ball. He'd win the ball and we'd just sort of slowly start another move again. And we just kept on doing that. But one word I'd use to describe it is fluid. Mellish... sometimes Lavelle would make a Mellish-esque run and Guy would just slot him behind. And they all just kind of had an understanding, that defensive unit, and I think once the attacking unit gets that same kind of understanding, well, there'll be no stopping us.
Yeah, 4-2-3-1 was the formation of choice for this game, Adam. Do you think this is potentially a good option for us going forward for these home games, especially the ones where we know we're going to have a lot more of the ball than we do, for some of the away games, like, your likes of your Boltons and your Portsmouths?
Yeah, I think obviously when you've got a 5-back, you're more likely to be more solid defensively. But one thing I think I brought up in one of the threads I did is the fact that it allows us, even against better teams, to get out easier rather than doing what Burton did and just hoofing it long and having a numbers disadvantage. Having those extra bodies in midfield helps us to get out in transition a bit better, and like I said, it helps us to keep the ball better, which is something, as you touched on, with some fans doesn't sit well when we keep the ball so much. We're not trying to fire long ball in. Oh my God, I could not believe how many people didn't understand that Burton were just going to sit in that 6 and not let us just pass through them, and we were either going to have to keep the ball or go long, and they just couldn't fathom the fact that if we keep the ball, we're not going to concede. And it was, as you said, it was just so frustrating. Yeah, love Carlisle fans, but.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, can't they? I think it's fair to say, the Carl fans. Butterworth's first start, Mike. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought he was very good, and he certainly grabbed the opportunity with both hands. And I think all going well should be in the team for Cambridge.
Yeah, I can imagine him being possibly in the team there if McCallum's not fit at the very least. Anyway, Mellish and Lavelle at the back. I just want to talk a bit about them. Adam, forming a really fantastic partnership and understanding, aren't they? Lavelle, much better ball player than I think we probably all gave him credit for as well. And the same with Mellish, actually, to be fair. I thought his use of the ball was fantastic on Tuesday night. He's come on so far in the last 4 or 5 years being with us in terms of his ability on the ball and his composure. That was probably his best defensive performance for us, I think, since he's arrived. I know, like I said, he was helped by the fact that they didn't really have much in attack, but he still did his job right, didn't he?
Yeah, as you said, I think that's one of the best games I've seen Mellish have on the ball. I mean, sometimes, especially when he's marauding into those midfield areas, the word donkey springs to mind with some of the touches and the just decision making. But that's who he is as a player. He's not necessarily finesse, but that's why he's effective, especially in and around these levels. But I think, the two of them are showing that they have more capabilities. I think if you were to swap out Lavelle for Huntington, I don't think it'd be quite the same, because there is a lot of times where Huntington gets the ball and doesn't necessarily try to find the short pass or doesn't want to receive it short. He'd rather go long and clear danger, just because he's maybe more of a traditional centre-back, especially with the age he is. But I really like what they're doing as a pairing, and I think it's been really solid.
Yeah, I think we've already touched on Finback. I had that as a talking point. We've already done that, and similar with Joe Garner, we talked about the fact that it's seriously impressive how well he's doing. It's a little bit worrying that we're constantly relying on him, and if he gets injured, what do we do then? That's one slight concern. I just want to talk
as well. If he gets booked in the next game, suspend.
Well, that's a good talking point. Actually, Garner, Guy, Mellish, and Lavelle are all on 4 bookings. One more booking, they are suspended for 1 match. Now, FA Cup games, I'm pretty sure count towards that.
They do.
So, I'm not suggesting they deliberately get booked in any way, but I'm saying it would probably be quite convenient for us if maybe 1 or 2 of them picked up bookings and missed that game against Orient in the Cup rather than missing a league game coming up.
Paul Simpson turns into Jose Mourinho in the Champions League. What game was that? I think it was when he's managing Real Madrid, told Xabi Alonso and Sergio Ramos to get sent off.
Yeah.
So they got their bookings wiped off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think he'll do that because I think he's made it pretty clear how valuable he thinks cup competitions are, especially with the money that comes in. I mean, with the Piataks, that might not be as much of a concern anymore. But I don't think he'll do that. But it wouldn't surprise me if somebody like Joe Garner, who is quite a wily operator, decides to get a late booking against Cambridge so he doesn't have to play in the Leyton Orient game.
Yeah, so it keeps it. I mean, that'll give him 2 weeks off basically ahead of the Bristol Rovers game in the league, which, to be honest, might not be the worst thing. I'd imagine I wouldn't be surprised if he was rested for that game against Orient anyway, to be honest, Garner. I think it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Right, let's have the 6-second reviews. First up, Cameron Alamu. He sent us in one. We started with Cameron at the game, so here's what he had to say about the match.
Hi, gents. First time for everything, but I thought I'd give it a go. This is my 60-second review of the Burton Albion game. All in all, a great performance from every single member of that team. Every player played well, each to a man. Especially Butterworth was very impressive. Sam Lavelle won everything at the back. Finn Back gave us options. And Jordan Gibson's trickery caused problems throughout the whole 90 minutes for that Burton Albion defence and midfield. All in all, a great performance, even though I was very disappointed in Burton Albion considering that they're the second most informed team in the division. But if that's what they have to offer, and we keep coming up with performances like that, I think we'll do very well. I would also like to make a special mention to the referee. Maybe the EFL should look into this referee and actually give out videos on how to referee the game, because that gentleman tonight in the middle did fantastically. Kept the ball ticking over, gave decisions that were correct for both sides, and the bookings were correct. All in all, an enjoyable night, and hopefully positive result at the weekend away at Cambridge. Up the Blues.
I should say here, you can take Cameron's views on referees quite seriously because he's a referee at Carlisle City's level, isn't he, Mike? I think he referees games around about that level, so he knows what he's talking about more than we do when it comes to refereeing. He is part of the refs union, isn't he? So he's sticking up for his mate there. But that's fair enough because we stand with him, Mike. And if a ref's bad, he'll say a ref's bad, isn't he? He'll say he's got that wrong. So
well, generally his referee union membership does prevent him from saying they're bad. In fact, the only referee that he's ever criticised ever was Thomas Parsons, which that says how bad he is if even Cameron criticised him. But like we said before, he really let the game flow against a team that the manager did not want the game to flow.
I've got to mention about Dino Mamrie there. You mentioned their manager looking like a disgraced PE teacher on the touchline with his video and t-shirt set up. But here's some of his. I think he was quite fair in some of his post-match stuff in terms of saying we deserved the win. They didn't deserve to get anything from it. But he said he was frustrated because he felt like they were controlling possession, which they clearly weren't when you look at the figures. But also that they lost 2 goals to counter-attacks. Now, the first goal, we had about 20 passes before Guy's ball into Butterworth. So that's not a counter-attack. And the second one, we were just having constant pressure on their goals. So I'm not sure where nonsense like that comes from. But then,
well, he said as well that Burton dominated possession well.
They didn't. They very, very clearly didn't. But yeah, that's him for you. There you go. Right, time for our regular review from young Craig Robson as well. So here's what he had to say on the game.
It's amazing this. For once we actually played like an established League One side. I mean, there was a few mistakes, but there wasn't many. I thought we went well about it, and we actually thought of what we were doing instead of just hitting it and hope it fell for us. We got the ball down, and we thought about who we passed it to. And to be fair, if you think about it, we had loads of opportunities to score, but we just didn't take them. But when we got our heads down, we were all over them. I thought Butterworth was really good, and to be fair, if you can keep up performances and perform like that, I think he might turn into a really nice and tidy player. We were definitely the better team, and we definitely deserved to win. It's just a matter of trying to take this performance and building on it, and hopefully we can do that and build a solid platform to kind of stand on until the Piatics come in, and hopefully give the club a new feel of security. The ref was amazing. It's been a long time coming that we've needed a decent ref. Just gives us hope, really. On to the next one. Up the Blues.
Not sure what he was doing at the end there, with it, moving his coat about or something there, Craig. But no, thank you very much for your review as usual, Craig. Before we get into the second half of the show, let's do a quick rundown of the Tuesday night results in League One. First up, Shrewsbury Town not having a really good time of it. Barnsley having a very good time of it, worrying that we've got them coming up in a few weeks. 3-0 win they got at home against the Shrews. Blackpool,
well, you mentioned that. I've got a mate who's a Barnsley fan, and he said that Shrewsbury are the worst team he's seen at this level since Barnsley have come down into this league.
Wow, I mean, I wasn't that impressed with them in the game at Brunton Park, if I'm honest. I don't think they're a very good side. Blackpool, 3-2 win over Cheltenham. Cheltenham has scored 3 games in a row now, haven't they, I think? So it's all going well for them, except for the results. Bristol Rovers got a 1-1 draw against Stevenage, which has seemingly cost Joey Barton his job. Cambridge, our opponents this weekend, they got a 0-0 draw at home against Portsmouth. Not a bad result for them. Exeter lost 2-0 at Derby County. Exeter really dropped down the league, haven't they, Adam? It's caught me completely by surprise because they were right up there when they beat us.
Yeah, well, it's one of those ones where you look back at it now. Obviously, a few weeks ago, you'd think, oh, well, it's not a bad one to lose because they were doing so well at the time. But now you look back at it, and they're probably going to be in and around where we want to be. So it's that home game's probably going to look worse and worse, I think, as the game, as the league goes on. But yeah, I mean, they lost the likes of Giovanni Brown, who was now at
Bristol Rovers. Yeah. But they lost Nombe, didn't they, as well, to Rotherham?
And Nombe, and others probably. And they had Jay Stansfield as well last year, who's with Birmingham now. So it doesn't surprise me that they're sort of in the position that they're at now. But yeah, that game's looking worse and worse as the season goes on.
Yeah. Lincoln got a 3-1 win over Charlton Athletic, who are not having, considering I think we all predict them to be in the playoffs, didn't we, Mike? They're not really having the start of the season they may have hoped. Northampton, 2-2 draw against Leyton Orient. They had a 2-1 lead in that game, and Bowie got sent off for them, and Ford got a 96-minute equaliser for Leyton Orient, so not a great result in terms of that. Port Vale, they're dropping down a little bit as well. They lost 1-0 home to Peterborough. Wigan seem to be finding a little bit of form again, which is a bit worrying for us because they're below us. They got a 2-0 win over Oxford United. That's a good result for them then. Wickham lost 4-2 at home to Bolton Wanderers. Some late goals in that one, though, to be fair. I think Wickham got it back to 2-2 with 82 minutes, and then Bolton got their third on 85 and then the fourth on 89. So, yeah, interesting on that one. And Reading, like I said, their form's terrible. They lost 2-1 at home to Fleetwood, a 92nd minute winner for the COD Army. So, yeah, great result for them in that sense. But there you go. In terms of the table, where does it leave us? I'm just trying to load that up now. We're still in 20th place, aren't we? Sitting 3 points outside the relegation zone, having played 2 games more than both Fleetwood and Wigan. So I suppose a little bit worrying in that sense, but if we keep up the good form we've got, the teams above us are the ones that are dropping down at the moment, aren't they? Adam, you're looking at, like I said, I'm looking at in the last 5 games, Exeter, Cambridge and Port Vale have all failed to win in any of the last 5 games. So we just got to keep up our solid form and drag ourselves up the table, don't we?
Yeah, well, look at the 5 teams who are above us. Shrewsbury, Bristol Rovers, Cambridge, Exeter and Northampton. I think Bristol Rovers are a little bit out of place just with the quality they have in their squad. I think they'll probably ascend a little bit, but Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Exeter and Northampton, I think they're all gettable. I don't think any of them, from the results they've had and what I've seen, look to be particularly special. So I think we're, even though we've played more games than most teams, especially with these fixtures coming up, we can really start to climb those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we'll take a short break and then we'll be back to preview the Cambridge United game.
Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the Football Club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're into the second half of the show. We're going to look ahead to this weekend's game down at Cambridge. First up, it's Behind Enemy Lines. And this week we spoke to Jack from the Under The Abbey Stand podcast. Jack's actually originally from Carlisle. So the opening question is him explaining to me how he's ended up being a Cambridge United fan. So there you go. What do we talk about? How are they coping with after losing some of their key attacking options this summer? How J.K. Gordon's getting on, having made his low move there in the summer window, and some of the ongoing issues they've got related to the attempts to renovate their stadium. So here's the chat I had with Jack earlier today. So yes, here we are with the latest episode of Behind Enemy Lines, and we're going to be speaking to Jack from the Under the Abbey Stand podcast. Obviously, it's a Cambridge United podcast. We spoke to you a few years back, Jack, when you guys flew up League Two and into League One. Now, some people who were listening back then might not remember the fact that you're actually from Carlisle, aren't you, originally? So how on earth did you end up being a Cambridge United fan?
Yeah, it's something I get reminded of very regularly. It was quite nice that Cambridge and Carlisle weren't in the same league because it didn't come up as much. But now we're back in the same league. Born and raised in Carlisle, first 20 years of my life in Brampton, actually, just east of Carlisle, and found myself at Brunton Park as a youngster, as a very young youngster. But then became an adopted Spurs fan for a few years, and then when I moved to Cambridge. I qualified as a broadcast journalist and immediately got a season ticket, started reporting on Cambridge, and now I've been here 13 years. And it's a bit of a funny story, and I get ripped all the time about it, for not being a loyal football fan. But, I go to more games than many fans of Premier League teams have been to. So, I'm a Cambridge fan, and always have a place in my heart for Carlisle, Saturday aside.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people end up following clubs for different reasons and different ways, isn't it? There's quite a few members of the London branch of the Carlisle United Supporters Club who are like born and bred Cockneys and Londoners, and they loyally follow Carlisle. So it does happen, you do end up following different clubs. I want to go back a few years, so back to that season in League Two where you guys got promoted. I mean, you guys were excellent that season, and a huge part of that was thanks to the goals of Paul Mullin and obviously the creativity of Wes Houlihan in midfield. Now, obviously, you lost Mullin to Wrexham that summer, and then I think was it a year later Houlihan retired after one season in League One. So how much of a challenge was it when you lost those two players to sort of keep yourselves? Because when a team like even like a Carlisle or a Cambridge, when we lost Michael Bridges, when you lose a talisman like that, it's difficult, isn't it? It's a challenge.
Absolutely. They leave such a big hole, and especially, it's not all about scoring goals, but when two creative players like that, Mullin had his breakout season. That wasn't something he'd done for like a number of years, but it was just so incredible. We were very fortunate to keep Joe Ironside, who had a good season after Mullin left and kind of picked up that mantle. We brought in people like Sam Smith, who'd been at the club before and really did a job, last season especially, and kind of mainstays, Greg Taylor came up with us, and Harrison Dunk from the conference, and they stayed and did really good jobs. Greg, has since left after, great years of service to the club, and Harrison's still with us but injured. But I mean, there was a good core in that team, and players like Adam May and Paul Digby kind of controlling it in the middle. But, I think if you look back to last season, you will see that we struggled, and we were very fortunate in the end to stay up in League One, but. A big part of that was Sam Smith's goals. He's a competent striker when he lets his football do the talking, and he's gone now as well. So, as you say, a club the size of ours, Cambridge and Carlisle, really, we're both on the smaller side and maybe punching above our weight a little, until you get the big takeover, of course. But I think you go through it quite often. It's quite transitionary, and it's quite difficult to maintain momentum when you get a player who performs well and then they are either at the end of their career, so retire or go and, get twice as much money a year, even if it is dropping down a couple of leagues. So it is just difficult, but I think we were very fortunate that Ironside really carried the mantle that season after, and then we've kind of, just about found our feet, and we're kind of rebuilding again almost. We're still finding our best formation and our best lineup, and that's clear in our results. But we're in kind of similar position to you at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this season. So what's your expectations for the campaign? Because I have to admit, when we did our season preview episode, I think all three of us thought you guys would struggle, mainly because we looked and thought, not sure where the goals are going to come from. We thought defensively look really solid, but up front, having lost those key players in the summer, like Smith and then and Ironside and co, it was kind of feeling like, ooh, are they going to struggle to get goals here?
It's an interesting one. I think, to be honest, football fans are pretty fickle, and you can get a million different answers. I think if you speak to, the happy medium of the Cambridge United fans, survival would be our aim this season, and I think that's probably realistic and where we should be looking still, really. And maybe, comfortable survival would be brilliant. Not being in the last 5 games and still questioning about whether we're going to stay up. That's the kind of aim. We shouldn't be looking to a season like last season, and I think, looking where the goals are going to come from, we've put a lot of, responsibility on Fajiri Okunabire, who stayed in and started the season really well, better from the bench than than starting. And then we brought in Gaston Hadme as well, who's looked good on loan from Ipswich, got a couple of goals. But you're very right; we do look like we could be light on goals, and we have seen it already this season. One of our best players this season has been Saiku Jana, who was really questionable last season, and he's good kind of out wide, and we can be dangerous from wide positions, but you do need the people in there to finish them off. Bringing Kachunga and Sully Kaikai in, both with really good Football League experience, Kachunga with Premier League experience, but both have already this season picked up injuries, so it feels like it could be a long one. And I think there's going to have to be someone to kind of bring themselves forward, whether it's Okunabire, whether it's Hadme, bring themselves forward and get that kind of 10, 12 goal, area, maybe pushing 15, and then that's where we need someone to really lead the line.
Yeah. So your manager, Mark Bonner, he seems a hugely popular figure of your fan base for the job he's done, which is quite similar to Simmo in that sense, quite remarkable the way he's led you guys up into League One. What kind of a coach is he? Because, he's got no background as a player, really, has he? So he's come up through sort of coaching through your youth setup and to be first team manager, but seems to have taken to it like a duck to water.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Had a season ticket in the Newmarket Road end at Cambridge United as a youngster, being involved with the club, like you say, in the youth scheme, kind of came through and cut his teeth basically as a caretaker, and then kept on, and it's just been incredible since then. I feel for Mark Bonner, because from the outside looking in, he is just an incredible success story and a manager we should be very thankful for. There was big questions calling for his head last season when we weren't doing well. There was a big kind of coming together of Rotherham. He went to Rotherham for an interview, and that was kind of out in the public domain. And I think that kind of coincided with where our bad run started. So Mark Bonner, for all that he's an incredible manager, he gets a pretty hard time from his own fans. But yeah, he's an absolutely incredible manager. He's working with what he's got at the moment. And I think we are a little bit kind of light personnel-wise. And I think we have struggled in the last 8 games, and that has really put pressure on his selections and also what he does when the game isn't going right. He's been questioned throughout his management career, actually, about how he reacts in games and what changes he makes and, the timings of the changes. So he's still learning as a manager, and I think Cambridge United fans, for the most part, are happy that he's doing it with us and the success that he's bringing us. But where we are at the moment and the winless run we've been on, a win is really important for Bonner at the moment, and I think he will be targeting Saturday for that. But we should have targeted the previous Saturday against Cheltenham, who'd scored 1 goal all season.
Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? That's usually a Carlisle thing to do to end a long run of a team not getting a result. But there you go. I'm going to ask you about your dangermen in the squad in a minute, but first I'll ask you about the links between the two teams. Obviously, the obvious one starting with you guys, J.K. Gordon. So how has he settled in? Because our fans were actually quite keen to get him back in the summer, but it seemed like he wanted to stay down south this time with his second loan spell. Doesn't appear to be getting much game time for you guys, though.
It's a weird one. He's kind of come into a team where we're fairly blessed in the positions that he plays in. He's looked really good, actually, since he's come here, though. When he's come on, he's made a real difference. He looks kind of bright. I think they're kind of like blooding him in a little bit. And just, we've not really found our winning formula and our best lineup yet. And I don't think he would necessarily be the answer to why we're not winning games at the moment. So I think he kind of falls down the pecking order a bit. We're very loyal to James Brophy Jack Lancaster getting starts, and it kind of really reduces the chance of other players getting a look in. And I'd be surprised if that necessarily changed on Saturday. But he looks really bright, and he looks up for it, and he looks like he cares. I think there's been a couple of times he's been a little bit guilty of not tracking back, and I think that Bonner is a pretty. He wants that from a player. He wants that kind of commitment. And I think if anyone doesn't quite put it in, then he'll be, they'll have to work harder to get back into the team. But he's a great asset. And hopefully, like you said when we spoke earlier, hopefully he can come on and get a goal against you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I mean, the thing that stood out for me with him is he's only probably about 5'11", but very good in the air, really good area, and physically really coped with League Two. No problem from pretty much the first game. So I'm sure he will come good for you guys anyway. I'll ask you quickly then about Thomas Holy as well. Obviously, he had a brief loan spell with you guys a few years back. Any good memories of him? Because he's a fairly popular guy at Brunton Park.
Yeah, he just didn't really have much time with us. But he hadn't played a couple of games. But yeah, he was. Everyone just really enjoyed not the novelty, because I don't want to belittle what kind of player he is, but he's absolutely massive, which was great. And yeah, I think he kept a clean sheet. But it's one of those kind of quiz questions we'll get in a few years as Cambridge United fans, and but I'll always remember it. I've got the Holy connection. But he's just like you've said, kind of before we started. He's just so good for set pieces. He really commands that box. He's not just tall. He's physical as well, and I think that's a real asset to have as a keeper. So yeah, I think you're really lucky to have him.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the danger men in your squad then. Who are the people we should be watching out for this weekend?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, really, isn't it? It's been quite a hard question to answer of late for United. We've really not set the world on fire, and it's been October has been really, really tough for United. We've scored 2 goals in the league, and we've lost an awful lot of games. So it's a real kind of make or break time for United at the moment. I think players, Paul Digby is kind of ever present in the middle, and he's not a flair player. But if you're, depending on who you start in that midfield, they'll have a real good battle against Paul Digby. Look out for our right back, Ryan Bennett. He's kind of a youngster who's come under a lot of fire this season for a few mistakes, but he is unarguably just one of the best players on that pitch. His technique is incredible. And I would say it's going to be an interesting decision for Mark Bonner to make. He's tried starting with Okunabire, he's tried starting with Ahadme, he's tried starting with both of them. And given that we've got Holy in goal, Ahadme's threat, a lot of it is aerial from wide position. So it might be that you see Okunabire start, and he could certainly give your defenders a bit of a headache. So yeah, it's difficult to see, how Mark Bonner's going to play this one, because we're close to each other in the table. We're looking over our shoulders. We don't want to be any further down. So yeah, I think this could be a really tasty game, and I think the team selection is going to be the thing that makes or breaks it.
It'd be interesting to see Ryan Bennett's battle with Jordan Gibson. Then he's obviously in very good form for us, playing on the left mostly recently. So that should be a good one. Off the pitch, there's been some interesting developments in terms of the stadium development at the Abbey Stadium, I think, recently, in terms of the supporters club thing. I've been sort of semi-following this, because I saw it a while back and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. And because it's a lovely sort of old school ground, the Abbey Stadium, but there's not been much done to it in the last 20 years, really, has there? I think it's fair to say.
It needs a bit of care. It is like a little bit threadbare. It's very old school, but it is kind of thrown together. And it's it's one of those kind of like gaps at each corner. It's not really joined together. And a major part of this has been the privately owned supporters club, which is on the kind of left-hand corner of the opposite end of the pitch as you look at it from the away end.
Yeah.
And it's, they run like a membership each year, and they've dug their heels in about not wanting to develop on the site of the supporters club. And this has meant that the United couldn't really do any work because it also sprawls out into the main car park of the Newmarket Road end, where the club opens. So it's been a real kind of sticking point. The club have done very well to negotiate with the supporters club themselves. And it finally struck a deal where we now have that and can now start to redevelop. I think Carlisle fans who've been to the Abbey before will remember that the away end is really far from the pitch. You've got quite a big gap. So I think moving the pitch closer that way, I think, will be the way, and kind of developing the Newmarket Road end to kind of feel more, more of a home end behind the goal, you make it even more kind of intimidating for visiting teams. And I think, just tidying everything up, it is very kind of old school. It almost feels like, going back in time when you stood in that end. And there's loads to be done to it. And it's just such a massive thing. The club, for the first time in a number of years, is in a strong financial state. We feel like we're run by a really good kind of owner and a team that he's brought in. He's brought in more investors. There's kind of clarity between them and the fans that there hasn't been in the past. And, the club have to take some credit for that. And they've worked very closely with, conversing with fans and trying to, put everything on the table and say this is how it is. And it's certainly looking better off the pitch than it has in a very long time. So I think Cambridge United fans don't have to think too far back to it being a lot worse than it is now. So, that's really positive. And hopefully, if we can consolidate our place in this league, that'll just make ground developments even better.
Yeah, because the capacity of the Abbey Stadium is not that big, actually, is it? I always forget that. It's only about 7,000 or 8,000, something like that, isn't it? So even when you get like a big cup game, you can't really get. There's a limit to how big you can get your crowds, isn't there? Right now, that's one of the challenges you face.
There is. I mean, I think it would take a big cup game for us to fill it. It's just under 8,000, I think, the capacity when they use every available part of the ground, and we've kind of been flirting around 7,000 at the top ends this year. So in capacities and kind of attendances, are increasing a lot, which is really nice to see, and it's nice to see new fan base coming in, a younger fan base too. But I think another couple of thousand. Could get over that 10,000 mark and maybe make it, a bit of a fortress and get more people in. There's a new deal just been struck with the university. I think there's quite a lot of questions in Cambridge about like a kind of divide of town and gown where the university don't show any interest in the club and stuff like that. So I think they're trying to kind of make a bit of a partnership there. So I think off the pitch things are looking pretty positive for Cambridge United, and it's quite hard to remember that when you go on a game streak where you haven't won in 8. But there's plenty to be thankful about at the moment.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, you've been very generous for your time, Jack. Thank you very much. So before you go, I'm going to have to ask you for a prediction for this weekend's game.
Well, I asked you earlier, and it was not the answer I wanted to hear. It's such a tough game to call, and I think Cambridge and Carlisle always seem to throw up quite good games when we play each other, and there's always goals. So you also predicted both teams to score. I think I'll go 2-1 Cambridge United for just to mix it up a bit.
Well, you said there's always goals. I remember the first time I came down to Cambridge was the 5-0 defeat under Graham Kavanagh, his last game in charge. So there's plenty of goals that time, but hopefully not in the same way this weekend, I hope. But there you go. Jack, thanks for your time and all the best for the rest of the season after this weekend's game.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks once again, Jack, for giving up some time to speak to us this week ahead of the game. Let's talk about Cambridge then. I'll come to you first on this, Adam, because I think Mike, Dan and I all predicted that Cambridge would struggle this season, and part of the reason we felt was that they didn't really have good attacking options and they hadn't really strengthened that much. Now, they've brought in a couple of loanies since then, the lad from Ipswich and J.K. Gordon. What was your thoughts on them coming to the season? Did you think they were going to have a tough time of it?
Yeah, I thought they'd be right around the bottom just because of how they were last year. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 games to go. They scraped survival by a couple of points, maybe even goal difference, I can't remember. But that was with likes of Sam Smith, Lloyd Jones, Joe Ironside, who have since left. Sam Smith obviously gone to Reading, which doesn't seem to be panning out too well for him. But I expected them to be near the bottom of the table. Their form suggests that they're going to be around there. They haven't won since the 4th of September. So this is a game that I think, especially off the back of Burton, needs to be taken full confidence in, and this is definitely a winnable game.
You look at it, Mike, they had a really good start to the season, actually. They beat Oxford in the opening game. The first couple of games, you thought, they might actually be right up there. Maybe it's one of these ones where an unexpected team finds these good attacking talents from nowhere and gets up there. But actually, now things have settled a bit. They're finding their natural level, possibly, would you argue?
Yeah, I think so. But it goes to show as well in this league, if you kind of go 5-6 games without a win, how far you plummet down the table. And likewise, if we can go on a kind of reverse run of 5-6 games without a defeat, how high it could plunge us up the table.
I wouldn't say plunges up, propellers up, I think.
Propel, that's the word, yeah.
Plunge up. Looking at their summer recruitment, Adam, has names that really stand out for you? I mean, J.K. Gon's an obvious one. We'll maybe talk about that in a minute. But I think Sully Kaikai is an interesting one. He's always been quite a decent forward. I think he used to be at Crystal Palace a few years back.
Yeah, well, it's one of those ones where they've just had to bring in a lot of sort of fringe players from other clubs, which is never a great sign when you're having to bring in the likes of, Kachunga and Kaikai and Jordan Cousins, who are all in and around your level and clearly aren't wanted by those teams. So it sort of suggests the level you're going to be at isn't great. I don't know how well Cambridge fans thought they were going to do this year, but I don't think they would have been particularly pleased with that summer transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, they finished 20th last season. I think they avoided relegation on the final day, didn't they? So it's I'd imagine the expectations were if they can finish a little bit higher than that, they would have been delighted. I mean, you look at the players they've lost, Mike. They have lost some key players. Lloyd Jones going to Charlton's one that stands out, as Adam mentioned before, and Sam Smith and Harvey Nibbs are the two others. And Joe Ironside dropping down level, I think that's more a case of him moving on really as much as anything, because he hadn't quite made it at League One level. But they had lost some big players, haven't they?
Yeah, well, you touched on Sam Smith then. I think he scored about 17 goals last season, which for a team at the bottom end of the table is pretty damn impressive. But again, he hasn't seemed to have done a lot at Reading. Lloyd Jones is a very good defender that they've lost. I think a lot of the other players they've lost are kind of just trimming off the fat of the squad. They didn't lose, they lost a few players to sort of clubs lower onto the M25 non-league circuit, as we like to call it. But I'm sort of going to stick by my prediction from the summer in that they're not going to do that well when you look at the squad on paper.
Yeah, I mean, you say they trimmed off the fat of the squad. When I was doing it, and when you go to transfer markets, it shows you the number of players in the squad. 33 players have got in their squad. Oof. I would say I think 4 of those have been promoted from the youth team to the first team pros, and there's a few others. I think some of them are like young players who've been put on the bench for trophy games, possibly. But still, it makes it look a bit fatter than it probably is in that sense. One area they do look maybe strong, Adam, is at the back. They've got a couple of good experienced players in there, in Ryan Bennett and Michael Morrison, haven't they?
Yeah, Michael Morrison was one that I picked out when looking at sort of the players that were going to stand out for them. He was at Portsmouth last year, so obviously played at a decent level for a decent club. So it's a good one to bring in, sort of try and replace Lloyd Jones, although I know he said about trimming the fat off the players they've lost. I know they weren't intending or wanting to lose likes of Sam Smith or Lloyd Jones, but they've lost basically arguably the 2 best players, and that's always going to be a concern when you did as poorly as they did last year. But Morrison, I think will be a solid player and just sort of a experienced EFL centre-back, so I don't think he'll throw any surprises. He'll just be what you'd expect from someone of his pedigree.
Yeah, and obviously Ryan Bennett's played at Premier League level as well, hasn't he, for Norwich City, so you'd expect him to have that extra quality in there too. In terms of recent fixtures for them, obviously 0-0 draw against Portsmouth in midweek. Pretty good result. I think they'll be fairly happy with that one. But when you look back beyond that, Mike, in the last 6 games, they're 21st in the form table. They lost 1-0 to Cambridge, which is a bad enough result in its own, and then you look at the others. 2-1 to Burton, 4-0 home loss to Barnsley. The only other one that stands out as a probably decent result there is a 0-0 draw at Derby County, isn't it?
Well, as well, we touched on it. A 1-0 defeat to Cheltenham is incredible, and a 1-1 draw against Shrewsbury at home, which Shrewsbury haven't looked great either. And you need to be getting points against the teams around you in the table if you're to stay up, and they haven't really been doing that so far. And hopefully, we're the next one to take some points off them.
Yeah, that's got to be the hope, isn't it? Really. Yeah, looking as well back at the head-to-head record between the two teams, it's a 35th meeting. Fairly balanced though so far. 10 wins for us, 10 wins for them, and 14 draws. And we've only lost 3 of our last 12 fixtures against them, Adam. But we did lose both those fixtures in the COVID season, didn't we? And to be fair, back then with Houlihan and Mullen, they were a pretty difficult task to face, weren't they?
Yeah, that's my last memory of them. Obviously, juggernaut they had going forwards, it was no surprise that they went up automatically. And keeping hold of those players was going to be hard, although I didn't think any of us thought that Paul Mullin would be down in the National League after the season he had, but that's how things have played out.
They named a stand after him, didn't they? After that one
they?
season. At Cambridge, yeah.
No, did they? I don't think
I'm sure they did.
Oh, that deserves some stick.
You're going to have to Google that now and check that, Mike, because you might have got that completely wrong.
Yeah.
you have a look at that while we're talking anyway. But that opening day game just stands out, doesn't it? It was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a tough season. Although we did quite well in the end, to be fair, but it showed how good they were, I guess, in that sense. Referee for this one, Mr. Sam Perk. Oh, go on.
Just heads up, they renamed one of their stands the Paul Mullin stand after that one season.
That is shocking.
That's ridiculous, that, isn't it? There you go. Sam Perkins. Sorry, go on, Adam.
I was going to say, I'm trying to think of a player who that would be. I was going to say
Christian
Jabba,
Dennis.
but he had a few years. Or the Christian Dennis stand. Imagine if the Andrew Jenkins stand was named Christian Dennis.
Well, I think as well, it's because he broke the record of most goals in a season as well.
There you go.
That was part of it. I think.
Maybe.
And he broke the record against us.
Threads. That's an absolute thread to hang by.
Yeah. Referee for this one, Sam Perkis from London. It's his 5th season as an EFL referee, having started out in 2019. He's the referee who got knocked out in that game, I think it was Swindon against Grimsby last season, where the player booted the ball clear and it hit him in the face and knocked him clean out. He's taken charge of 11 games so far this season, and as Dan pointed out to us in another chat, he's very card happy. He's handed out 59 yellows and 6 red cards already this season. So, yeah, that we might get those bookings of anyway without even trying for this one.
And possibly some bonus ones as well.
Possibly, yeah. Last season he handed out 110 yellows and 10 red cards in 29 games. The last United game he took charge of, though, Mike, was the 2-1 win at Swindon Town that we went to last season, where Ryan Edmondson got the late winner. I can't remember him being that bad in that game. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I think I remember him being pretty bad.
Yeah, well, if you can remember, then he must be.
Well, I only seem to remember good refs, so I don't remember much about him, so he probably wasn't any good.
Yeah, probably right on that one. One thing we actually didn't mention that I should say, come back to it, is J.K. Gordon, obviously, Adam. He's gone on loan there. I think a lot of fans wanted him back and were a bit disappointed we got Plange instead of him. Taking his time to settle there, though. He seemed to want to move there because he didn't really want to move north, did he? I think that was the suggestion, wasn't it? He'd rather stay south this time round.
Yeah.
But he's finding his feet with them, isn't he? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, well, you could probably say the same about all their strikers. They've not exactly lit the world up so far this season. But yeah, getting JK back would have been nice, to your point. But I think any transfer that involves a London club to come into, or London player coming to Carlisle, is going to be hard, especially long term. There's only a few who sort of settle in and really ingratiate themselves, and he was loved by all the fans, but it's obviously he's ended up in Cambridge. But I did think it would be interesting to see how he'd adapt to the to League One. Obviously with his sort of long absence from the squad, we actually didn't see too much of him in League Two, and when he was there he was good, but I think it was always going to be a challenge for him coming into a squad that just lost the likes of Sam Smith and, be sort of expected to be one of the main goal scorers. But I think, if my memory serves me right, he's not really been a main starter. He's more been used as sort of an off-the-bench option.
He's been used as a sub a few times, hasn't he, I think, and he's just, like I said, he's just finding his feet, I think is probably the best way to describe it.
For me, an issue I had with him is that he wasn't as versatile as you maybe want a modern forward to be. He was very good in a front two, but when he played sort of out wide in a 4-3-3, he'd go missing a little bit. And in the modern game, you kind of need to be quite versatile.
Yeah, and he drifted out wide quite a lot when he played in that front two as well, so it didn't really make sense that he struggled out wide, really. But there you go. Right, we'll do the played for both now. Dan's not been able to do one for us this week, so I'm picking it. There's a fair few I could have chosen it from. I was tempted to go for Scott Patterson, who younger fans probably won't remember. He was a player in the 98-99 season who scored a stunning free kick against Brighton at Gillingham. When Brighton were playing at the Priestfield back in those days. God, that seems a long time ago for Brighton now, doesn't it? When you think where they are playing Ajax as we're recording tonight, it's ridiculous. But there you go. No, I've gone for someone who only had one season at United, but was hugely popular in the season he did spend with us. And that man is, I think, the only Brazilian to have played for us, possibly. Magno Vieira. Yeah. Yes, Magno Vieira is the one I've picked. So yeah, Magno Vieira, born in Brasilia, in Brazil. Bizarrely though, started his career at Wigan Athletic. There's no things about him playing for any youth teams in Brazil on his Wikipedia page. There's not a single mention of it. So he seems to have just come over to play Wigan. There was some story about it I read it a while back. I could try to find it before we recorded it, but I couldn't find it, unfortunately. So yeah, he started out with Wigan Athletic. He had a loan spell with Northampton in the league in the 2003-04 season where he played 10 games and scored 2 goals. But then at the start of the 2004-05 season, he signed for United on a season-long loan deal from Latics. And he did pretty well, I think it's fair to say, in that season, Mike. I mean, were you going quite regularly back then as well?
Yeah, I seem to remember, didn't he have some kind of muscle condition that meant he got cramp quite easily? That kind of held him back a little bit.
Yeah, I think he was quite often got subbed in games, didn't he, really? And yeah, I'm looking back at his record from that season. So his debut was at Forest Green away, at Forest Green's old ground before they moved to the new lawn. And he scored in a 3-0 win, I think came on as a sub in that game. He came on as a substitute in the second half and scored towards the end of the game, well 15 minutes to go. He then played as a sub again, I think, in the next game. In fact, no, sorry, he started the next game against Farnborough. A game that we won 7-0, which I still think is our second biggest ever win, isn't it, I think? 8-0's the record, and it still annoys me to this day we didn't get an 8th goal in that game, really. I'm sure there's probably fans out there who would hate the idea of our record score being a conference game, but there you go. I remember that game because their manager was Dean Austin, who used to play for Spurs years ago. And I think he talked about how they were going to come and try and play us off the park and play great football and everything. And looked a bit of a tit at half-time when they were 5-0 down against us. But there you go. He then obviously, his next goal didn't come till we played Aldershot in September, where he scored a hat-trick and a 5-0 win down there.
Yeah, and I remember that game because obviously you score a hat-trick, you get to keep the match ball. And Aldershot were being funny because it was their ball. And they didn't want him to take the ball, and so like our club, we were like, well, we'll buy you a new ball, like, but he just wants that, and it was a whole thing.
Yeah, so he managed to score in total. I'm just checking it over the season. He scored 13 goals in round about 40 or so appearances, I think, in league and cup games, and he was a bit of a sporadic scorer. He had long spells where he didn't score too many, but he sort of played on the wing, and he was a really popular figure, actually. He's really hard worker. I think probably then, Mike, his most famous goal, and Adam, you'll probably be even too young to remember these goals, but his most famous goal was probably the goal against Halifax, wasn't it?
Yes, live on Sky, which was set up by Glenn Murray.
Yes, by someone... caused though by someone that you sort of know of Ian Dunbavin, the keeper for Halifax.
Yes.
A Formby resident, is it fair to say?
Well, I don't know if he lives in Formby. He just kind of hangs off Stephen Gerrard's coattails in Formby. So, yeah.
Spent his life doing that. So, yeah, basically, anyone who's not seen it, you can go and see it on YouTube if you're a younger fan. Basically, Dunbavin comes and claims the ball near the edge of the box, and Murray sort of runs into him. And he reacts, and he kicks out the back of Murray's leg. And Murray, like, what you do in terms of ref, and the ref signals with his arm saying, play on, come on. And Dunbavin thought that meant, come to me, because I want to speak to you. Had the ball in his hand, the ref's like, no, stop. Blows for the free kick. Dunbavin stupidly drops the ball right in front of him. Murray places the ball on the ground, plays it into Vieira's through on goal and put it into the empty net. And they went mad, didn't they? And it was a 1-0 win that as well, which made it even funnier. Yeah, like I said, live on Sky, very, very funny moment that was. It's on all the sporting bloopers things, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
But yeah, so he had that one season with us, and there's kind of hope that we could get him back permanently, wasn't there? But it didn't work out in the end. He went back to Wigan, didn't actually even play for Wigan that following season. Nothing happened. He ended up leaving Wigan and going to Barnet. He spent a lot of time actually sort of down south at this point. He played a season at Barnet where he played 21 and scored 3. Season at Crawley where he played 22 games and scored 5 goals. At that time he had a loan spell at Cambridge. I think were a non-league side by then. Played 10 games and scored twice. And yeah, then he sort of just bobbed about. Came back into the league with Wickham briefly. Then he had his spells at Ebbsfleet. Fleetwood Town's probably the best spell he had. 64 games and 31 goals for them. I think he was part of their team that got promoted to the league. Round about the time Jamie Vardy would have been there, actually. I imagine he would have been his strike partner round about that time. He moved to... in fact, yeah, he was the season they won the conference title. He was playing there. Forest Green, he had a spell there, 49 goals, 5 games. Then he sort of went to Nuneaton Town.
49 goals in 5 games.
Sorry,
that's impressive.
49 games, 5 goals. Sorry, I got the wrong way around. Nuneaton, he had a 2-game loan spell there. And then he made the move to New Zealand. And I'm going to get these pronunciations wrong because I think they're like in Maori, some of them. But Wairarapa... Oh my God, this is a terrible one. Wairarapa United. I probably got that wrong, and I do apologise for that. Team Wellington, Kapiti Coast United, North Wellington, and then there was another team. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that one. It's something like... No, I'm not even going to try it. He's had a couple of managerial spells at Kapiti Coast United in North Wellington, and yeah, he seems to be doing a lot of coaching over New Zealand. I think he's settled down with Lasso over there as well now, so he seems really happy. And yeah, I'm sure there's an interview John Coleman did with him somewhere in the News and Star side that's well worth digging out if you want to have a read of that, because yeah, it was really good. He talked very affectionately about his time with United because he was a young lad then. He obviously couldn't probably speak that much as much English as he probably does now. So yeah, fantastic stuff. There you go. Magno Vieira is the play for both for this week. Just a few of the others to read them out. David and Moo, you get to mention every now and then here. Ian Atkins managed both clubs. He also played for Cambridge as a player manager. Des Byrne had a spell playing for Cambridge. Probably the less said about his time at Carlisle, the better. Tom Cowan. Mark Dobie's an interesting one. He's a player who just did the non-league circuit around Cumbria. I think he played for like Gretna, for Carlisle City, for Workington, for Barrow, for Darlington as well. And Queen of the South actually had a spell there too, so he's an interesting player. Steve Finney, God rest his soul. Josh Gillies, Jimmy Glass, Dean Holdsworth, Thomas Sholey, Jabbo Abiri. I would have picked him, but we always go with Jabbo, don't we? Jack Iredale, Reggie Lamb, Danny Naisbitt, Scott Patterson, we mentioned before, Richard Procas, Dave Rushbury, Magno Vieira, and of course the legend himself, Dean Walling, also had a short spell with Cambridge. Right, on to United ahead of this game, guys. So, for this one, Adam, do you stick with 4-2-3-1 or do you go back to the 4-3-3?
No, I'd stick with it, especially with the team we were playing against. If we were coming up against, say, that Barnsley fixture was at the weekend and McAlmont was fit, because I think it will depend on that, on his fitness, but it sounds like he'll be available, which even if he doesn't start, I think is a good thing, just because we'll have more options on the bench. Yeah. But yeah, I'd stick with it, because Butterworth, I don't think from that performance deserved to be dropped. I know it's a little bit harsh on McAlmont, but I think he just adds a bit more of an attacking edge, and I think Moxon and Guy can do that defensive work. They don't necessarily need another person there, especially against a team like Cambridge who aren't necessarily banging in the goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike, in terms of this one, would you make any changes, or would you stick with Butterworth in there for this?
Yeah, I'd stick with it. And I think as far as playing Saturday, Tuesday goes, I would imagine, touchwood, that the players won't be that knackered, because we spent a lot of the game kind of just patiently passing it side to side rather than, running about too much.
Yeah, we very much controlled the ball, didn't we, in this one? I think I'll differ slightly from you two. I think if McCalmont's fit, I said on the Carlisle Social that I would stick with the team, but actually thinking more about it, smaller, tighter pitch, away from home, I would be tempted to put McCallum back in if he's fit and just try and make it a bit more of a contest, and then have that option to bring on Butterworth in your back pocket if you really need to in the second half. But either way, I think I'll be confident enough with either side playing. I think it's fair to say. Right, predictions time. No points scored by any of us for the Portsmouth game. We didn't do any for the Burton game, obviously, because we didn't do a preview for that one.
And I was going to predict 2-1 as well.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
That little chestnut.
Yes. Let's have them for this one. Mike, you can go first.
I'll go for a 2-0 win, and I'll go for a goal from Maguire and a goal from Gibson.
Ooh, okay. Now, Dan isn't able to send them in this. He hasn't been able to get it recorded, but he has sent me a WhatsApp with his ones in. So Dan has gone for 2-0 as well, with goals from Maguire and Lavelle this time. So it's not exactly the same as you two did the other week, didn't you? Adam, what are you going to go for this one?
I'm going to go 3-1 Carlisle. With, I think Sam Lavelle has to get a goal. I don't know how he put that one over the bar, considering how well he connected with it. I think if the roof of the Warwick wasn't there, that would have got sent towards Tesco. But Yeah, I think 3-1, goal for Lavelle, and I'm actually going to go with a Maguire brace.
Okay, fair enough. When I did the one with the Cambridge pod, I predicted a 2-1 win, so I'm going to stick with that 2-1 with goals from Lavelle. I think Lavelle's due one. I think it's coming soon enough. And do I go Gibson as well? He's in form. No, I'm going to go with Garner. I think Joe Garner's going to get another goal, so there you go. 2-1. Right, the X-Files section to round things up. A few bits to cover this week. A name we've not mentioned for a while, Zach Clough. I think that's probably because the Australian season's been in its break, I'd guess. But Zach Clough, he scored a penalty for Adelaide United in their 3-0 win over Central Coast Mariners. Sam Cosgrove has been a naughty boy. He got sent off for Barnsley in their 1-1 draw at Leyton Orient. Joel Senior got his first goal for Morecambe in a dramatic injury time winner in their 3-2 victory over Sutton United. Sutton having a really tough time of it, aren't they? You know, they've got 2 wins, I think they've got now, and that's it. And they lost late at Wrexham as well the other day. Olufelo Olomola, he scored 2 goals, his first 2 goals for Bromley since moving to them in the summer, in their 3-1 win over Oxford City. Hallam Hope was on the score sheet for Oldham in their 4-3 win at Rochdale. Big crowd for this one, wasn't it? It looked like the Oldham fans pretty much filled that stand along the side, didn't you? You'd expect them to. It's only down the road, so not maybe that's so much of a surprise. And Gavin Riley, at the weekend, he scored for Queen of South in their 1-0 win at Annan Athletic. Into midweek, Brad Potts scored for Preston in their 2-2 draw with Southampton. Did you see the late equaliser for Southampton in this game?
No.
Yeah. Bazunu, goalkeeper. Well,
it's an own goal, isn't it? It's Ched Evans' own goal. So basically, the keeper got a touch on it, but he wasn't going in, and it came off Evans and went into the back of the net. So very dramatic equaliser for Southampton there. Alex Gilead scored, but it was only a consolation for Bradford in their 4-1 loss at MK Dons. What position are they in now, Mike? Are they 17th?
17th, I think, yeah.
Yeah. We've ruined them, haven't we? So they've just not recovered from that. That playoff defeat just completely crushed them. It's just, I thought they'd be right up there. I genuinely thought that there'll be a setback, but they'll be up there this season. And no, they're nowhere near it.
That 3-year contract for Andy Cook's looking brilliant, isn't it?
I think he's scored 3 goals this season.
Yeah.
I always felt like that was a bit of a risky one. They should just let someone in, pay him a stupid amount of money and go. George Glendon, he scored for Chester in their 2-0 win at Southport. I think we call this one the Save Away Derby, don't we, Mike? Because the Merseyrail Derby.
It takes a long time to get from one to the other by train.
Yeah, that's horrible.
You've got to change it Moorfields as well. I think you could probably do the train journey from Liverpool to Carlisle in a similar-ish time as you could from...
Well, I'm very well experienced with that, and it usually takes about sort of 2:15, 2:20 to get from Carlisle to Liverpool, and that's with the change.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't surprise me if it's the same for Chester to Southport.
It's about 45 minutes for each, isn't it? I think roundabout for the 2 journeys. So with a little bit of a break in between, you wouldn't be far off, I think. On to the other bits, just to wrap things up. Bit of sad news. Dan Wordsworth has retired at Workington after 12 years and over 300 appearances for the club. He never made a first-team appearance for United, but he's a Carlisle lad, and he's done really well. I think he had a brief spell at Kendal, I think, didn't he? And a little bit of time out in Australia, but 12 years and that many games and a few promotions in there as well. Fantastic achievement. And I think he was saying, wasn't he, that basically his body said, no, I can't keep doing this. He's in pain after games. And, you know, when you're only doing it part-time, Adam, you work with, non-league players in Marine. They get to a point where they're like, you know what, I enjoy this, but it's not worth it anymore, is it?
Yeah, especially with the toll of, it's not even like that's your sole focus. You've got to go to work the next day, and you've got all these aches and pains, especially for the lads who, have major injuries. It's even worse. So I can totally understand that.
Yeah. Adam Murray, he hasn't been out of work for long since being sacked by AFC Fylde. He's turned up at Cheltenham Town to be one of Darryl Clark's new assistant managers at the club. Mason Hardy, former youth team player, he's signed for Northallerton Town from Ashington on a dual registration. Quite a common thing in non-league football, that, isn't it? Basically, where players are available for 2 different clubs, probably at different levels, but interesting one, that one. And finally, a couple more. Tristan Abrahams, he got an appearance in goal, and he kept a clean sheet for Welling United because they were already 5-1 down when he went in goals, and it finished 5-1. So well done for him. Torquay United. I think he was quite pleased with himself, wasn't he? Put it as his new profile picture on Twitter.
Yeah, and, not the best thing to do after a 5-1 defeat. Like
probably not, no, but there you go. And finally, one that I didn't actually write down there, but Dan reminded me of last week. Danny Butterfield was part of the management team that left at Lincoln City last week. So a few changes to managers at our level, but I don't think Simmo is going to be going anywhere anytime soon, which could only be a good thing. That's it then, guys. A bit a long one, but we covered a fair bit in there, I think it's fair to say. Thank you very much for both of you joining me. Just a thanks once again to our sponsors, the London branch, for their support this season. Always appreciate it. We'll be doing a review of the Cambridge game, obviously, next week, and a preview of the Leyton Orient FA Cup game as well. Before we wrap things up, Adam, I've been told to remind you of this because a few people pointed out to me, you didn't say up the Blues at the end, and people were like, did you edit that out? I was like, no, I didn't realise till afterwards. So
that's a cardinal sin.
It's a cardinal sin because we've had people say to us that they genuinely say up the Blues as we say it on the podcast. When
just somebody at an office job, just sat at the desk, up the Blues.
Well, funny enough, me and Mike, when we were going up to the Leyton Orient game, we were in Wigan, and I go to meet, because I get out at Wigan North Western, and Mike gets off at Wigan Wallgate and walks over, and there's a little McCall's next door, so we go in and get a drink for the journey up. As we were stood there outside, a guy comes up to us and goes, "You never believe this, I'm listening to you right now on the podcast." It's a lad called Slice on Twitter, I think, isn't it, Mike? And he's messaged us a few times before, and he's just like, "This is the weirdest thing. I was hearing your voice in my headphones, and I look up, and there you are. I'm looking right at you." Because he wasn't going to the game today, so fantastic stuff. But yeah, just goes to the amount of people who come up to me in games and say, "Oh, really enjoyed the pod." I'm like, "Thank you very much. I've no idea who you are." Say, if you're someone on Twitter or Facebook, something, say who you are, so I can say a thank you on the pod and that kind of thing. So there you go. But anyway, that's enough. We've rambled on for quite a while. It's another long one for you guys, but I know you guys who do dog walks, stuff like that, really enjoy them. So there you go. Thanks everyone for listening, and most importantly of all, up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
Up the Blues.